enough of that. Welcome to another fantastic episode of The Art of Intelligence, where we decode the future of AI one story, one use case, and one bold idea at a time. I'm your host, Barlas Yuce, inviting you to join me and industry leaders as we explore how artificial intelligence is reshaping our world from the boardroom to the classroom and beyond. Whether you're an innovator, a skeptic, or just AI curious, this is your upfront seat to the real conversations and practical insights behind the buzzwords. Let's paint a bigger picture together. Today we have a absolutely fantastic friend of the show, friend of mine, just an all-around great person, Mr. Ryan Norton.
Thunderous applause, thunderous.
To thunderous applause. So, Ryan, thanks for taking the time to meet with us today. You are very well known throughout the world of IT technology partners, and I'm very glad that we're getting you to join us today and give us some insights about what you're doing and what your thoughts are on AI. Before we get started, and before you give us your background, I'd like you to give me a understanding. We ask similar questions to all of our guests. If you could have any job in the entire planet, and there's no stipulations, you don't have to change anything, but if you could have any job, what would it be?
Well, for me, I've always said if money was no object, I would work in the music industry. Either I wouldn't want to travel with one band and go to a lot of places like a road crew, but I'd love to be an A&R person, or I'd love to own my own music venue and get to see all the artists who come through. If I had my dream role would be to work in the music industry and support artists. In fact, we're one of the goals of the place that we bought here, and this, was to build a nonprofit recording studio for musicians. I love to see what music is doing these days, and support an art that's been very cool to me, and that would be my dream job if I had it to do all over again. I would have done it years ago.
I love it. It's fantastic. It's not exactly what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to bring in the bees.
Well, that's a concept that I call ikigai. Right? If you've ever heard of the Japanese concept of ikigai, it's that confluence of the bees for me are that confluence of what you love and what you're passionate about, coupled with the things you can make money at, coupled with the things that the world needs. And within that, you tend to find your meaning, your reason why, right? Your North Star. And if I were going down that route, right now, for me, it would be the confluence of my life in tech and raising bees, and the part of what I think we're going to talk about as part of this podcast is just where the technology can meet the agriculture business and actually change the world.
That's fantastic. Before we get started, just to give some of our listeners some context, can you tell us where you live, how many acres you have, and what kind of bee stuff are you doing right now on those acres?
I live up just outside of Spokane, Washington, on about just shy of 22 acres. So we're up in the Pacific Northwest, up in what they call Zone 6A for any beekeeping geeks out there. So we're in the Zone 6A, and right now we have... I'm focusing on more natural beekeeping techniques, finding ways to help bees survive without as much human intervention. And I'm working on a bunch of different topics around that, and actually plays right into the discussion that we're having today.
That's fantastic. Can you give me a little background? I know you. Half the world that I know knows you and what you're about. You're a very vocal proponent of bees technology and the company that you work for. Can you give us a background on Ryan Norton, maybe going back to the start and kind of giving us a little bit of an abridged life story, starting in the Marines, please? And thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you. No, it's a funny story, and I tell everybody, if I go into a bar and bet people that they can't guess what I do for a living, and if they do, I'll buy their drinks, I can just say I've never bought a drink. Nobody ever picks that I do what I do. I came from, as a youngster, I was sort of a feral child. So I was left to my own devices to find my own way. And, as you mentioned, I went in the Marine Corps in the early 90s, and it was the best decision I ever made. It took me far from home. It stripped me of my safety net, and it allowed me the opportunity to really kind of grow up myself. I was stationed in Hawaii, so it's not like it was a hard duty station to have to live through. I got out in the real world, and it's funny, I don't know that I've told you this or very many people, but I actually got into the paintball business, and I ran a paintball shop.
No, you've never told me that.
And I actually played semi-professional paintball for a period of time under a couple different monikers. Yeah.
Hey, there's
Oh
professional
yeah. You
paintball
can
people.
actually Google Ryan Norton National Paintball League or some stuff like that, and pictures of me will come up from various tournaments and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. And it was weird because,
Wow.
in that industry, and I don't know how many people know this, but in that industry, the markers, the paintball guns for the really high end ones, they can cost $2,000 and $3,000 a pop. And this was in late 90s, early 2000s, call it. So that was a chunk of change, right?
Hmm.
And a guy came in, and he was buying one, and he just said, "Man, you're so good at this." He goes, "You ever thought about selling technology and do that?" Yeah, he pointed me to Compaq, which in Colorado Springs was doing really well at the time, and this was pre-HP merger. And I went there and just absolutely loved it. Fell in love with technology, and the great thing about then, and it's something that's uniquely different today. A lot of times you get onboarded at a company today, and it's here's your laptop, here's a list, and go, right? Back then, they actually had full-on training programs. So they would pull in teams of people and train them at the time on what is a USB, what is what's all the
Surprise!
technology,
Yeah,
right?
that's awesome. That's the way it should be.
And it was such a great start for me that when I got out on the floor as a new person, and most new people, day one people, everything's exciting. And I started beating everybody. I was crushing them all. And at the time, I was a contractor, so I wasn't making the commission. I was just an hourly contractor, and I was watching all these people take home $4,000 and $5,000, $6,000 checks at the end of the month, and I was taking home like 6, 7, 800, 1,000, something like it. It was awful, and I just decided, hey, this is for me. And what was interesting is I left Compaq, and they got bought by HP. I went to Agilent, which was an HP company, and I was doing technology. I was doing like database administration work. Absolutely no idea how they picked me to do that job. It was a complete, like, I had an in, let's just say, right? And while I was there, I got an opportunity to go back to HP, who now owned Compaq, to my old team, and they were going to hire me full time, and I would be on commission. And from there, it just took off. It was awesome because I got the chance to do a little bit of everything, just like in a restaurant. They say you should start by doing the dishes before you become a manager. I got to do everything from mid-market sales, SMB, enterprise, and then I found software. And at the time, HP OpenView and cloud technologies were just really kind of coming into their own. And right in the middle of that, and I know the story's going long, but it kind of paints the picture of how I got to where I'm at. Right in the middle of that, somebody approached me and said, "Hey, man, you're good with customers, but you'd be great with partners. Like, have you ever thought about going the partner route?" I had no idea how to do that. I knew nothing about what I was doing. And I have since said that if it weren't for all the customers, sales is awesome. But if you can go in the partner world, partners are always trying to find a way to help each other. We're always trying to find a way to work together. And if you can somehow summon that magic sauce that gets a partnership to work, and I know you know this as well, when you get a partnership to work and the partners are doing great business together and everybody's firing on all cylinders and they're looking back going, God, why didn't we think about this years ago? It becomes a game changer for you. And to me, that was the drug, right? That was the alliance's drug. And I found myself doing that for a while. I got acquired by Avnet through a company, and I was doing like partner channel alliances for cloud partnerships. And I got laid off. Like many people in today's world, I got laid off, and it was a gut punch. I went to Rackspace, got back into hardware sales, kicked ass for about a year and a half with them and moved up into a channel sales leadership position that took me to a partner that was selling AWS, and they hired me. And ever since then, I've just been doing the AWS ecosystem thing, and I've worked with everything.
What partner was
What's
it?
that?
What partner was it?
Second Watch, which is now Oleon. Yeah, so I went from Rackspace to Second Watch. Yeah, and then from there I went to CloudReach, as you know, and that's where we really started to connect. And then from there I went to Wipro for a little bit, and now I'm at Revolutionize.
Fantastic, great story. I expect nothing less. Epic journey from an epic person. Can you give us a little bit of what Relutech and Nerd Rabbit does and the story behind that? Just a high level kind of elevator pitch to the crowd.
Yeah, it's interesting. I first ran into Relutech when they were a company called Canvas. Mark Metz owned a company called Canvas, and during that Avnet acquisition.
Wait, can we call out Mark Metz on this podcast? Mark?
Yeah, I believe so.
We love you. Hopefully we'll see you here on this podcast soon. Yeah,
I don't
gotta give a shout out to Mark.
I don't know how much he remembers, but Mark and I met in Hawaii and at Sales Club for Avnet. We met at Sales Club for Avnet, and at the time, sales clubs were still something really good. And their model was buying buying aged data center equipment and then doing all the refurbish, recycle, and all that stuff. That was their model, right? And Avnet purchased them specifically for that business. And Mark, doing what Mark does, he spun it off. They started a company called Relis Cloud. Relis Cloud sold to CloudReach, which is where I met most of the people that I know. But CloudReach actually spun off the hardware asset disposition business. And so Mark got to keep that part of the business. They just kept Cloudimize. They wanted the software, right? And so, fast forward to today, Relutech, which is the former Canvas, and then Relis Cloud, has now become Relutech. And the reason we've done that is because we've really combined three businesses, right? We have our traditional asset purchase, leaseback, and third-party maintenance business, where we will support customers in providing them with funding to move to the cloud. So let's say you have an on-premise data center and you want to move to AWS. Relutech can come in and buy that hardware from you and lease it back to you during your migration period. And through that effort, we will also save you money on your hardware maintenance. We usually are 50% or more less than OEM vendors. And now what's unique is the changes that have happened in the VMware space have given us a whole new outlook and lease on life. We will support VMware on-premise perpetual customers while they prepare for their migration to the cloud. And so if you think about
how do you do that?
Well, you think about your car. You can buy a maintenance plan from your dealer, or you can buy a maintenance plan from a third-party company. They'll send you and say, hey, we support, Volvos or whatever you're driving these days. I forget, your FJ, right? So you can buy your maintenance contract from a dealer, or you can buy it from a third party. Well, we're a third party provider, right? And the reason that companies will use us is because A, we're significantly cheaper over OEM vendor pricing, but two, it frees them up to start to focus on their cloud migration journey, right? So when they're not worried about their hardware, and they're not worried about their costs, and they're not worried about maintenance, and they're not worried about CapEx versus OpEx, and we settle all that, then they can focus simply on the path of moving to the cloud. And when VMware pulled all their stuff a year and a half ago, where they started jacking up customers' rates and forcing customers into long-term contracts, we actually picked up the ability through our network to be able to manage customers' VMware environments. So for customers who have that on-premise perpetual VMware environment, we can come in and take that over, save them from having to take the uptick from Broadcom, and give them a path to be able to move to the cloud, either natively or on Nutanix or Verge.io or something like that. So that's the crux of our business. But then the other piece that we do really well that a lot of people don't know about is we also own a platform called Nerd Rabbit. And Nerd Rabbit is a staff augmentation platform. I call it the Uber of staff aug. And essentially we can do 10, 20, 30, 40-hour projects all the way up to, I tell everybody you can use this for 4 hours, 4 weeks, 4 months, 4 years, or for life. It doesn't really matter to us. And for companies that are looking to find high-end quality cloud talent, Relutech is an outstanding opportunity, and everything that we do can, oddly enough, be transacted on AWS Marketplace. So there's a tremendous benefit there as well. So the last thing that we do is the IT asset disposal services, and for customers who need on-premise swing gear while they're moving to the cloud, we have warehouses full of data center equipment that we can provide swing gear to customers while they plan their cloud migration. And I'm actually proud to say that it looks like we're going to be part of the 2028 Olympics with one of our partners, providing Cisco switches for the 3-month period that they need them for the Olympics. So kind of a cool business. And, we're an 11-year AWS partner. We've been doing AWS now for a long time. We do have other partnerships, but the predominance of our business is helping customers fund their migration from on-premise out to the cloud.
Wow. That is a lot. So that is pretty fantastic. I didn't know about the 2028. Where are the 2028
LA,
Olympics?
brother. La La Land. It ought to be a hot mess. If you thought traffic sucked in LA before, wait till summer 2028.
Yeah, I will not be in LA for summer 2028. That sounds.
I was just down there for Summit, and it's already getting to be
horrible.
messy.
Yeah, no thanks. Yeah, I've met Mark Metz right after he started Relutech, and when he was starting up Nerd Rabbit. We've had many phone calls together. I like the man. I'm very glad that you're there, and it sounds like you're thriving. There's a lot of stuff that you're doing that can help the community out quite a bit. Can you give us, before we start going down the super AI side, can you give us the story on the bees? What's going on? How to get started? And I know you've given us a little bit of light touch on what you do, that you have the bees, and that you're doing it, raising them in the most natural way possible. But can you maybe give us a little bit of understanding on what your thoughts are with the bees, and maybe the technical side that's coming along with it?
Yeah, I was really lucky in the sense that when I was young, my family had beekeeping in our history. We had a beekeeping operation in Brush, Colorado, of all places that nobody's ever heard of. And I remembered as a kid going to the apiary and eating fresh honeycomb. And then, every year for Christmas, we would get a gallon of fresh honey from my great uncle was who had it. And I just was fascinated by A, how good real honey was, and B, how interesting it is to be that close to an animal that can hurt you and have such reverence for it. Right. And, anybody who's been in beekeeping for any period of time knows that either you get it or you don't. You either fall in love with it and it captures you. I call it getting stung, right? You either get stung by the process or you fall away. And a lot of people fall off. They fall off beekeeping. Well, probably about 15 years ago, Mason, my son, he got into it wasn't that long ago. I guess it was about 10 years ago. He got into the beekeeping or save the bees, the save the bees motion. And I started to read up on colony collapse disorder and started to see that, the crazy thing about bees is we're losing bees at a tremendous clip. 60, 70% of colonies are dying off every single year. And most people don't know this. And the thing is like if 60 to 70% of our cattle were dying off every year, people would be freaking out. But bees feed the cattle. 1 in every 3 bites of food on your plate is pollinated by a bee or touched by a pollinator, right? Now, there are people in this industry, I will be for real, that will like, hey, don't forget the native pollinators. I get it. Right now, we're talking honeybees because that's my passion. So when we moved up here, and in fact, you came to the inspection of our house, and I was telling you right then, I wanted bees right off the bat. I felt like bees were something I could manage with my work schedule and something that I could grow. And at the end of it, I could, hopefully harvest some of my own good, clean honey. And it was the only thing, and we had a crazy first 2 years here. It was the only thing that allowed me a space to go back and put all of our BS on back burner, all the family stuff, the flood we had here at the house and all that stuff, changing jobs and starting a new career, a new opportunity. Going back there with them started to calm me down. And you realize pretty quickly, and I don't know if you've ever looked at this, but there are studies that show that the key that bees hum in and the vibration that they put off actually lowers blood pressure. It reduces anxiety. That's why they have those bee homes that you keep sending me. That's exactly the concept behind those bee homes, right? Is that you can go sleep on top of a hive of bees, and both the air that they put out and the vibrations that they let off are very beneficial to human health. And I don't know if you know this, they just found out that the bee venom is actually showing very positive signs at being able to immediately eradicate cancer cells. And then,
That's awesome.
And then lastly, there are empirical studies that, believe it or not, beekeepers live longer. And they say that the reason is because they're, around these bees, and they take in the pheromones and they hear the vibrational frequency. But I think there's an element too of you get stung, and their venom, believe it or not, is actually beneficial to the human body. And so we got some hives, and I tell everybody that having a beehive is like having a 50-sided Rubik's Cube where every side is missing one color. And you're going to get the puzzle close. You're never going to get it right. And there are so many challenges facing bees right now that, getting back to the concept of ikigai, it became really clear to me really quickly that if I could bring my passion for now beekeeping together with my passion for technology in this day and age where we have artificial intelligence and robotics and all these things that can help solve this problem, then maybe we could make a difference in the world that's real, things like regenerative farming, things like ag tech, things like beekeeping, and understanding how we can save the food supply for our population. To me, there's no bigger opportunity ahead of us, and there's no better use case for the technology that we all know and love.
Wow. Just making the tears come out of my eyes. It's fantastic to hear you talk about the bees. I am a big fan of what you've done on your 22 acres. I think it's something that all of us should get to experience at one point in our lives, and is an end goal for a lot of people. So congratulations on winning.
Yeah.
It's really phenomenal when you think of what you can learn from bees. It's just the data that you can collect. You can see how the world is doing by how well they're doing. And so I've always liked it. Maybe I need to get into beekeeping one day. Maybe I need to go get 22 acres and start planting wildflowers everywhere and start, getting myself into the bee world. And how many times have you been stung?
Oh, you know what? Not very many. Actually, my wife has been stung way more than me because she goes out there without any protective gear, and then she likes to dance up to him, so she looks like a threat. She's learning that lesson now. She can be a little bit hard-headed in that space, right? It's interesting. I hear that a lot. Like, God, I'd love to go get some land and have bees. But did you know that backyard beekeeping is not only doable, but so let me give you some statistics that you might find interesting. Bees actually do better in cityscapes than rural environments because people plant flower gardens, they plant fruit trees and things like that. Out where I'm at, you've seen my land. Behind me is 1,000 acres or 1,700 acres of nothing but wheat, and hay. And monocrop agriculture, pesticide usage, stress. We're taking bees from almond pollination in California to apples up in the Northeast to berries to, down into the South for things like oranges and a lot of the farm pollination that we do. We're trucking bees all over the world. So we're stressing them out. Then there's mites and diseases that are really starting to hammer them and make them weaker. And then you couple that with all of these neonicotinoid pesticides that are being used, glyphosate,
Did you just say
neonicotinoids. Yeah, look them up. I'll
neonicotinoids?
send you something on them. So people should know that most of the food that we eat, including the corn, the seeds are now being treated with what are called neonicotinoids. They're pesticides that they're using on the seed. Well, the problem is that works great for keeping pests away, but when bees try to forage on any of the products that are using these pesticides, they're losing their bearing and their ability to use the Earth's magnetic field to return to their hive. On top of that, the
Whoa.
hives are getting stressed and full of diseases. And like what just happened to me this last week, I was home on Monday, checked my bees, everything was fine. We had this great honey, of which you should be getting some here very soon. And by Friday, when I got home, the hive was empty, all dead. And it broke my heart. The good news on that is, dude, I'll say this, on LinkedIn and everybody that I've been talking to about this, I went out and I had a talk with the other hive. Believe it or not, I talk to my bees every day.
As you should.
And I said, it seems like if they were going to be sacrificed, me being able to raise awareness from that sacrifice seems to be the payoff. And I have, 40,000 views of that post. And, I think people are starting to engage with it. And, leading into the topic that I think you want for the crux of this podcast, I'm working a lot with AWS right now to combine them with companies that are working to solve this problem using artificial intelligence and robotics, right? And I do feel, Ryan's personal opinion, I do think that the future of our food supply could be in the hands of this technology, because if we can solve things like desertification, where, our soil is becoming dry dirt. You ever see a tiller pulling on a field and there's a big cloud of dust behind them? That dirt's dead. That's why they have to keep shoving inputs like nitrogen and things like that into the ground. When you pick up a healthy handful of soil, it feels like soil, like it's brown, it's dark, it's rich, it's got microbes in it. You go to a farm out here and the dirt is as dry as can be. Well, there are a lot of people focused on regenerative farm techniques, which are using animals and plants together to keep the soil full of nutrients so that we can continue to live. But right now, and I'm not a doomsday naysayer, man. I've never been into this stuff. I'm not this isn't a hippie guy coming here to talk to you about this, but they say we have like 60 seasons left in our current agricultural planting zones of soil. Because every year, what do? They dig up all the soil. They break up all the mycelium contacts that mushrooms and things like that give the ground to feed it and keep information going back and forth. And that's why that dirt, when you pick it up, it's dry, it's powdery, it's no good. And what we're trying to convince people to do is not only keep bees and learn about how to save pollinators, but how to encourage farms and monocrop agricultural areas to plant pollinator strips to allow pollinators to return to your area. So that's something I've been heavily interested in right now, and it's just got a lot of momentum. And this week, unfortunately, losing my bees turned into this really great conversation with a lot of people about how can we, people who've been in the technology industry now for years and years, and we sell all these great benefits that the technology does, right? It's all we do. We talk about the benefits that our technology brings. I can think of no better benefit than to save the world's food supply. And our technology, believe it or not, has the ability to do that. And it encourages me, but we've just got to get the right voices out there hearing it.
So, just to play devil's advocate, because I always do, what do you say to those people that are going to say, look, can't we just get a robot to do it? Can't we just take pollen and pour them over the flowers or the food ourselves? Like, why do we have to have bees go do that? Why can't we just do it ourselves? Because I've been hearing that for, my entire life. When the bees die, then the planet dies. But Is there no other way to do that?
So China is exploring, because of this very problem. China has been exploring manual pollination, but there's a couple things wrong with manual pollination.
That sounds like something Charlie Sheen would get in
Right.
trouble
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Winning. Right. But manual pollination is actually just that. It's a bunch of people going up with ladders and going flower to flower and working on pollinating these individual flowers. It's very, very labor intensive. It's not accurate. And what's interesting is the only thing it does is pollinate that plant, right? Now, think about what a bee does. A bee will land on a flower. It will consume the nectar in that flower. That's what makes the honey, right? And then through static electricity and through the vibration of the bee, the pollen will get on the bee's body and they'll take it back, and that's what they feed their young. They call it bee bread. It's basically fermented pollen, believe it or not. And from that, you get honey. From that, you get there are a lot of health benefits to pollen. Believe it or not, I'll be collecting pollen next year and sharing it with people up around my area, because local pollen can reduce your allergens. It can increase your or decrease inflammation, believe it or not. And what we're finding is, yes, it is somewhat possible for humans to find a robotic or a manual solution. But all that solves for is the pollination. It doesn't solve for all the other things that pollinators do as part of that, whether it be honey creation or whether it be wax or whether it be, putting pollen into these edible formats where we can harvest it, and put on your salads and help you with your anti-inflammation and your allergies. And so it's like with many things in the human culture, I think we try to solve a problem that eliminates nature rather than finding a way to work with it. And the thing I push back on anybody who says this is like, we're talking about being able to go colonize Mars. And yet we have everything we need right here within nature to be able to solve our own planet's crisis. And we're saying we'd rather fly to a planet, years and years away and try to recreate what we already have here. And I think that if people just get together and realize that the problem is monocrop agriculture, disease, stress, and us all relying on an industry to do stuff for us. I don't know if you know this, but 80% or something like that, and I could be off on the percentage, but it's really high like that. 80% of the honey you buy in a grocery store today is adulterated, which means it's not raw honey. The stuff I sent you today, adulterated. Yeah, it means it's been either combined with other products, thinned out with sugar water. Beekeepers, and I'm one of them, are having to feed their bees sugar water supplements because there's not enough nutrients to get them through the whole year. So you'll see a lot of beekeepers are feeding their most beekeepers feed their bees a mixture of sugar water to get them to create their own food before they create the honey that we all eat, right? So we basically get them to fill up on junk food, and then all the good stuff that they go get goes into a hive for honey for the beekeeper, and then we rip that off and they're left with all the junk food. I'm trying to do that a little bit differently here, but that's the world we're living in today, man. And I know that if there's a use case for general artificial intelligence, that use case can be in combining what you said, robotics with beehives that use artificial intelligence to track, measure, and monitor all of these things and feed that data back to the scientific community, right? Because that's who's solving this problem. I'll give you another example. Just this last week, there was a study from a college, and I want to say it was Boston, but I could be way off. Anyway, they decoded the ingredients or the things that make up pollen, and they've started to recreate that in a lab. And believe it or not, they're showing 15% increases in bee population as a part of that. This is where
by recreating pollen to give to the bees so they can make honey.
Yeah. Well,
even if they don't have access.
It's what they feed their young, right? So bees So what bees do is they feed their young pollen. So if you ever go look at a beehive, you'll see on the backs of their legs these little pouches of white, red, blue, all different colors. That's pollen. And what they do is they take those pollen tabs and they go deposit them in the hive, and then they ferment them. And that's what they feed baby bees. That's how they feed them. And over the winter, they'll eat that as a protein supplement. And then after the winter, when you go to start them up, you'll feed them pollen just to get things going. This new one is...
So what you're saying is bees give their children bee beer.
Yeah.
And they get them nice and drunk, and that's what they feed them is bee beer.
We call it honey beer.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I like it.
So that's what's going on, man.
Well, with bees, AI, so many things can be done with bees with the AI, just because they're a closed group within each hive, and each hive can act different or the same. And the world's food is kind of based on this. So using AI to kind of see how a closed system like this with thousands of pieces can work together with a single hive mind, the queen telling them what to do through pheromones or dances or whatever. It's an interesting concept for anyone that's dealing with AI. I did some research into some of the AI software that's out there, and one of the ones that kept coming up was a AI system called Beekeeper AI. So it's a healthcare AI company, and it's kind of focused on accelerating the development and deployment of AI through secure, privacy-preserving collaboration between healthcare data stewards and AI algorithm developers. And the company kind of developed this thing called Escrow AI, and it's a patented zero-trust collaboration platform that allows the AI algorithms to compute and encrypt protected data within the data steward secure environment. But there's so much going on, and Beekeeper AI is kind of the app of the day, if you will, for us, because you're a bee guy. That's the one that we're going to highlight. So go check out Beekeeper AI, healthcare company that deals with security. It's such fascinating things. Is there a specific AI use case that you have? Like, I know we're talking AI with bees, but is there something that you've seen? It doesn't have to be about bees. It could be anything that you've seen that seems very interesting to you, or maybe you'd like to see one of the smart listeners do to get started on. Is there anything that you've seen?
Yeah, there's some, it depends on how you look at it, right? Like if you're looking for the individual beekeeper, right? There are tools, like I use one called Hive Tracks and another one called Beekeeper Voice. These are AI tools that you can speak into that will take notes on your colonies. It'll provide you with real-time recommendations. You can take pictures of the individual frames and it'll say, we're seeing this problem, or, you might want to consider this. The one that I'm most excited about, or the few that I'm most excited about, is there's a company called Beewise Technologies out of well, they're actually out of Israel, but they're headquartered here in the U.S. out of San Francisco. And Beewise Technologies is building robotic bee houses that will home the equivalent of what would be, I don't know, probably the equivalent of several hives. So it'd have to be, depending upon the size of the home, I think it's like 2 to 3 hives worth of bees per box, right? And what they're doing is these boxes are enclosed. So rather than human manipulation, robotics are manipulating the frames. They're turning them the ways they need to be turned. But within that, they're actually using AWS AI right now to track inside the hives. Now you think about like the way AI is already changing the world. A camera can be over a large crowd and identify individuals, right? Human eye, it's very hard to do. A camera can do it really quickly. Well, they're building these hives with cameras inside that are tracking large populations. A typical hive will have between 30 and 40,000 bees at its peak. A big hive will have as many as 60,000 bees at its peak, right? And that's a lot for a human to look at, identify, pick things out, and see what's happening. Well, in between the frames, the way I understand it is the cameras are taking pictures of each side of the individual frames, and then it's identifying quickly which bees have disease. It's identifying which, whether you're seeing any pattern issues, because brood pattern or baby pattern is very important. It'll track the amount of honey that you have and the moisture content of the honey. It will track the amount of pesticides in the hive. It will track whether the queen is failing or whether she's laying at a good rate. It'll track baby production. It'll track heat, temperature. It'll even track what you called out, the waggle dance, which does a few things. It either tells where food sources are or where they're going to swarm to. And this hive, this robotic hive, is probably one of the most exciting things that I've seen in a long time. And one thing I'm advocating for, and since we're coming up on time, I'd love to take just a minute and advocate for this. Whether it's sure. AWS or Amazon or not, somebody should invest in this company. And what they should do, and the reason I think it's Amazon, AWS, and Whole Foods, is because if you think about the confluence of those three companies, Amazon, the largest retailer in the world, and
who owns
Whole Foods and has the largest technology company in the world. And what are we all trying to do? We're trying to sell people on why AI is going to help us and solve our problems. And there's a million use cases, from legal to healthcare to financial advice to, things like that. But if I were going to put my money where my mouth was, I would invest money in these hives and put one on every single Amazon office globally. And the reason that's important is there's a company called the Best Bees Company. You can look up a TED Talk from Noah, who's the one of the head speakers from Best Bees. It's an amazing TED Talk. And in it, he talks about how bees are doing better in cityscape environments, like I talked to you about earlier. In fact, they're finding tremendous amounts of uptick data in cityscapes versus rural scapes. But what else they're finding is they're able to identify what plants you should replant in the face of a natural disaster or after a fire. What's going to bring pollinators back if Puerto Rico forces another hurricane? How quickly can we get those animals back and up and running? What they've found is that they're also able to track the DNA of honey, so they know how much pesticides are in our honey, how many plastics, believe it or not, are in our honey. They're able to track a number of things that they're doing through the scientific community. Now imagine if, rather than having to go to a bunch of beekeepers and apiaries and stuff like that, if you had automatic read-write data that was coming in from hives real time around the globe, you would be able to track this on a much more macro level than what we're doing it today. And the technology already exists. So I have a 6-pager in front of AWS, and I'm willing to talk to anybody who will listen to me, that I would love to see next year at reInvent for Matt Garman to be able to stand up and say, hey, not only are our AI solutions solving problems for our customers, but we're actually saving the world. And there's no better use case. Period. So my technology, the one I love, is this confluence of the robotics AI space coupled with this natural space. And you're also seeing it right now, Barlas, in overall agriculture. They're building collars for animals that will track their blood, their blood and diseases and how much they're eating and temperature and all that stuff. There's farm technologies right now that are tracking the pesticides in the ground and the, how fertile the ground is and how much moisture you're using. And there's real thought that in the next 5 years, ag tech could be the leading technology industry, because I think you're going to start to see things coming around on how can we regenerate our farms? How can we regenerate our land? How do we get our soil back? How do we save the food supply for your children and my grandson, And I think there's no better mission, if you ask me.
I think you're 100% correct. I think that this is a very noble cause, and I support you 100% in anything that I can do. So yeah, Matt Garman, let's get you on board, my man. Fantastic. We are coming up on the end. Maybe we can get Noah from BeWise up on the next podcast and have him do some of this explaining. Would be wonderful.
So I did talk to the owner of BeWise Well, he's North America. He's one of the co-owners. He lives in San Francisco, and I told him that we would send him this podcast and see what he thinks, and he'd love to get on it. Noah from the Best Bees is an outstanding advocate for this topic. And if you ever want to get a bunch of others, I know so many bee nerds that, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
In the meantime, the very ending of this, I want to give you a forum to talk about a little bit about what's next with Revolutech Nerd Rabbit, as in, you guys have any events that you're going to be at, any podcasts, anything that you're going to be. I know your team goes all around the United States, New York, San Francisco, Florida, and does events. Do you have anything coming up that the listeners can be a part of?
Yeah, we're coming up, as you know, on the end of the year, right? And so we're coming up on FY26 planning for AWS. Believe it or not, it's just blowing me away. But we're going to be at AWS reInvent this year. We have a few events. We're doing a golf outing in DC next week. But mostly I would say from our perspective, we have a bunch of podcasts on what we do. We have a bunch of partners that we work with that we try to share their content with as well. And from our perspective, the biggest thing that is coming up for us is that VMware is jacking up a lot of its customers' rates, and it's messing with its customers. We aim to push pause on that with AWS and our partners to be able to deliver a better experience. And I think any customer, anybody who's listening to this that has an on-premise data center that's looking to move to the cloud, that is looking for a path to be able to monetize and to be able to justify their migration to the cloud, Revolutech can be a great advantage. Our ability to, again, buy the data centers, support them while they're migrating and support their VMware. But the other thing, like I said, we own the staffing platform, and we're one of the only companies that likes to talk about StaffHawk. All the other companies, shy away from it. We lean into it. So if anybody listening needs short-term work, or you need, to supplement your IT staff, we're a perfect opportunity for that. And again, everything we do is on AWS Marketplace.
Wonderful. Ryan, thank you so much for the time. Hopefully you listeners have been getting the message across about the bees and Revolutech and Nerd Rabbit. And if you do see Ryan at any of the events, whether it be reInvent, New York Summit, or any AWS or Revolutech event, go by and say hello. He's happy to shake a hand.
Yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn if you don't. And I look the same as I do on my LinkedIn profile, so I'm hard to miss. But hey, man, thanks for the chance to talk. I am very passionate about this topic, and candidly, and me, this is all pure. Like, I don't benefit from any of that stuff. Like, I don't get paid when Best Bees does better, right? So for me, or BeeWise or any of these companies, for me, this is a real opportunity, and this is something I'm deeply passionate about, is for us to finally put our money where our mouth is and use this technology for the betterment of the world, and not just for the betterment of an individual company and how they read their power or their PDFs or whatever. Right? We've got to get way more strategic, and we've got to think bigger than that. And so hopefully this is the start of something good, man. And anybody who you can share this with, or anybody who wants to talk about it, I'm more than happy to show how AWS could benefit, or a company could benefit, both financially and, in the eyes of the people, by leaning in on this topic. So happy to do so, brother.
Thanks, man. And with that, like and subscribe the podcast on Spotify. I think this is going to be the first one we're putting up on YouTube and Apple podcasts today. So Ryan will be our first guinea pig for that. And then don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on LinkedIn, so you can not only see all these podcasts the day they come out, but also all of the articles that they spawn and get written about. So thank you very much.